Hey, everybody. Welcome to the ShopNotes Podcast. I'm your host, Phil Huber. Thank you for listening. Thank you also for all those people out there who are subscribers to Woodsmith, Popular Woodworking, or ShopNotes Magazine, or one of our online membership programs. It's what puts this show in front of so many people. The email address is woodsmith@woodsmith.com if you have any questions, comments, or smart remarks. On today's episode, we are going to deal with several of those comments and smart remarks as we get started. We'll also talk about a viewer-submitted challenge for some highly figured material that he has. We'll also take a dip into the world of woodworking related literature before checking in with Logan on his church door project, among other things. Speaking of checking in, we're going to check in with one of our sponsors. This episode of the ShopNotes Podcast is brought to you by Harvey Industries. Good enough is not good enough. See all of our new tools at harveywoodworking.com. All right, we'll begin with comments because that's a really good place to start.
That's where we get fired up.
That's our hype.
Play the hype music.
Yep. Here we go.
Enter the Sandman or something here. The last episode that I have comments for, we got MU Tiger 83 writes, when it comes to hardware for a project, I guess I fall within a blend of John and Logan with a little of Phil thrown in. I'm not as cheap as Phil, but I don't want to be too extravagant. I also look at the purpose of the project, like John, where the determining factor is the longevity of that item that I'm building. If it's an heirloom item, then what's a few extra dollars for decades to come? Finally, just like I want my design build projects to be unique, and to stand out, I also want my hardware to do the same, just like Logan. Thanks for all the wonderful topics over 233 episodes, and I've already purchased my ticket for Woodworking in America 2025. Really looking forward to the whole shebang of a weekend with tours, classes, vendors, and meeting a whole lot of awesome people. There you go.
That should be our slogan for Woodworking in America. Come see the whole shebang.
Yeah.
Right there. That's a promo. Cut that.
Yeah. Alfido158 says, HR told me to let you know that we don't use the term albino mahogany anymore. We now call it poplar.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, I replied to that and I said, you should have said that the mahogany was grown in the mountains of Caucasus. It's Caucasian. The mountains of Caucasus. Is that right?
Yep.
Did I say that right?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think so.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah.
So.
Right. Puppy Doc says, why do I picture the side of Logan's house facing the garage covered in a snowdrift style pile of sawdust of multiple colors, but mostly of ash sawdust? And for some reason, grass doesn't grow in that green space.
The stupid fan's not strong enough. I was thinking 22,000 CFM. It moves a lot of air. It doesn't move it very far, though. It's like volume versus pressure. A lot of volume, very low pressure.
Okay. I'll allow it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then this one was a delight and a little bit of a surprise. We had Don Barton emailed us with a photo. He said, after listening to your podcast discussing wood character, I thought I would see if you had any suggestions for how to use this piece of walnut, 7 inches wide, 41 inches long, half-inch thick. The bottom portion is very loose. For all the people watching the podcast on the radio, I will put a photo of this on the show notes page. What he has is a board of walnut that it appears to be sawn right through a crotch section of a log. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the bottom portion that he says is loose is probably like a bark inclusion down in there. Or was a kind of a rotting section of the tree when it was cut. What's interesting is that the three of us had pretty much the exact same thought for what that board should become. And I believe that it really, really, like you said, Logan, really wants to be door panels.
Mm-hmm. I'll be honest, though. I did kind of skip over the dimensions.
Okay.
Little narrow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it depends on what the project is.
Mm-hmm.
It does.
Like a 7-inch wide door panel is probably looking at a 10 or 11-inch wide door, 12-inch door, depending on what your frame sizes are.
Yeah. And depending on how thick the piece is and the thickness of your door panels, you could always try to bookend match it, resaw it.
Right.
Go with something a little bit wider to glue up. But
I think with if you did a small wall cabinet, you could use it as case sides too. Mm-hmm. Kind of a Krenov style. Now, based on that bark inclusion down there, would either of you guys mess with that, trying to stabilize it, or would you just cut that off?
Yeah,
cut it off.
Yeah, especially because it's at the end. It's not like it's in the middle of the piece.
Right.
I feel like it's gonna want to split out. And
yeah. Now, what's probably gonna happen though is you cut that off, and like where that center of that crotch feather is probably gonna have some forms of cracks in it. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to want to come apart there. John, don't give me that.
Right.
Like, I didn't know we were going to be throwing out words like crotch feather during this episode. I was ill-prepared, facially speaking, to just, keep a straight face, all right?
That's on you.
You got to prepare me. Yes. I'm sorry. I apologize.
So, yeah. So, like, I could see that there potentially being a weak point in the center of that the whole way up.
Sure.
Which, if that's the case, then maybe you let it split up that, and then you take the two outside edges and flip them and glue them back together. So then you have a book match, slip match type thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But I don't know.
The other thing is, visually, it looks like the figure in the board kind of goes diagonally up to where the cut of the board is. So it's like, do you want to try to cut the board to bring it more straight up and down, or does that matter to people? Do you want it to be symmetrical, or
I think if you did it as door panels and you cut them sequentially from it, then you could flip one of them and then they would kind of angle towards each other.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest issue here is that the board's only 1/2 inch thick.
Right.
So at that point, I'm probably cutting this into 7-inch wide. So I'm probably cutting it into 12x7 boards and using them for the tops of boxes or something. Mm-hmm. That's probably box panels. That's probably what I'm doing.
Okay.
But
that's another, The point is that there are still plenty of options for a board like this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's definitely a feature piece, though. I wouldn't just randomly put it into a large project.
You're not going to use it as a rail on the side.
You're right. The rest of it is just normal walnut, and then here's a figured rail.
I think what you could do is use it if you did a shaker hall table and you used this as 3 of the aprons, the front and the two side aprons of a table, and then that would be like a real standout piece.
Shakers were known for their use of fancy figured woods.
Right.
They were a very gaudy people.
Yeah.
Right.
Or is it godly? I don't know.
Yeah, there you go.
It might have been. Yeah, one of these. Yeah.
More of a charismatic shaker.
Yeah. The evangelical shakers.
Yes.
I believe they were.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, did we just upset another group of people?
Yep. Add it to the list. Add it to the list.
Throw it on the pile. Anyway.
Clutch your pearls, everybody. It's the ShopNotes Podcast.
Yeah.
If you want to send in a photo of a design challenge that you have and want to hear a bunch of nonsense related to it, please send it to us at woodsmith@woodsmith.com.
Yes.
We'll be happy to include that.
Let us roast your lumber. It's the least we could do.
Yep. Speaking of, though, just today, an article went live on the Popular Woodworking site about Logan's review of thermal wood.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about that?
That is very poetic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was, I don't know, maybe a year ago, I was contacted by a company. I get contacted by companies all the time. But contacted by a company up in Canada called Thermal Wood Canada that is thermally modifying material. And this is not a new concept. Thermally modified ash and maple have been around for a long time. And the luthier industry has used thermally modified wood as a substitute on lower end guitars and stuff like that for ebony. So basically, this company in Canada, Thermal Wood Canada, they specialize, and I think their main product is exterior lumber. So think of decking and siding and stuff like that. Nice decking, nice siding. So they're taking ash, maple, cedar, and they are sticking it into a giant vacuum kiln that's a heat and vacuum. It pulls all the oxygen out of the kiln, bakes the wood at a super high temperature, but because there's no oxygen, it can't combust. But it does something to the molecular structure of the wood that makes it super, super resistant to water, moisture. It makes it basically hydrophobic. Think of your yard when you have had rain for a couple of years or a couple of months and it's cracked and the dirt all of a sudden won't soak up water. It just runs off. That's exactly what happens to the fibers of the wood. And it's a great product. But they said, hey, you know what? We can actually do this same type of thermal modification on maple. And when you think of torrefied maple, or most companies that sell torrefied maple, it's a very walnutty color, I guess. It's somewhere in between sun-aged cherry and walnut.
Okay.
It's that rich brown color. I think that Thermal Wood Canada is dyeing their maple black first and then thermally modifying it. So then they're baking it and it turns black as ebony. The only way that I could tell a difference, it doesn't have the same smell when you're cutting it. Ebony has a very, I would associate ebony smell to a chocolatey smell, but maybe that's just my association with the black dust. It has a kind of a sweeter smell. It doesn't smell like it. And on the, a larger piece, you can pick up the grain lines of the maple that they use for it. Okay. And you can kind of see a shadow of that grain. But it works almost identical to ebony. It's as chippy as ebony is. It's a fantastic alternative. So I had gotten these samples in, and they weren't big samples. I mean, one of them was like a fretboard size for like a violin or a cello. Another one was, maybe a 6-inch wide by foot long piece. So very small pieces. But a couple of issues back, I did an article on inlaying with the Shaper Origin, and I did curly maple and ebony, air quotes, for the inlay on this nautical star. The ebony was actually this thermally modified maple from Thermal USA. So it was super cool. Ebony is a CITES 2 species, I believe, so the export and import of it is regulated very heavily. The harvesting, exporting, importing is all regulated. So this is a really good economical and ecologically friendly alternative. I mean, ebony is... Last time I bought ebony, it was $120 a board foot. This is significantly cheaper.
Does this stuff have kind of a campfire smell to it when you're cutting it? No. Really? Because I've heard that from other torrified products.
No, I don't know. I guess I didn't notice it.
Okay.
I didn't notice it, so I'm not saying there isn't, but I did not notice it. So, I was trying to pull up the pricing, because they call this their obsidian ebony, I believe.
Okay. Yeah.
I was trying to pull up pricing on it. I looked at pricing when I got the samples in, and I thought it was very reasonable for what it was. Can't find it right now, so if I find it, I'll let you know.
I find it interesting about the whole process because, we've seen the Japanese technique of scorching the outer fibers of wood.
Yeah.
They've done that for siding on houses in Japan for a long time. Mm-hmm. We use it as a decorative. You've done that a couple of times in some videos and on TV show projects here.
Yep.
But the idea of roasting it enough that you can get that color all the way through is kind of interesting to me, especially since it seems like the difference between ending up with thermally modified wood and charcoal, which is made in a very similar way, is probably a very fine line.
It is. It's the temperature at which they bake it and the lack of oxygen.
Right.
Where I think when they do charcoal, there is a small amount of oxygen injected into the burn. This is not. So, but yeah, it was a very, very cool product. I remember them saying, because they do if I remember right, Thermalwood Canada does all of their own modifications, so they can do pretty much any size that somebody would want. It looks like they stock violin, cello, guitar, fingerboards. So they are thermally modified, torrified maple infused with resin. So there's a black resin that is infused in there. They're not as cheap as I thought. So a violin fingerboard is approximately 11 by 2 by 5/8 of an inch. And they're $20 Canadian. So I guess that's like $3 US, right? So.
Depending on tariffs, yes.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. So.
All right. Anyway, it was just kind of interesting that came up at the same time. So. There you go. All right. I was... this past year for the TV show, we did a couple of projects that were made from Burr Oak that you had supplied. And over the weekend, I was reading, which I do periodically, read through the book Sand County Almanac by Aldo Leopold, who's a conservationist and forester in the early 1900s. Also from Iowa. I think he was trying to think now where he was from. Davenport? Burlington? Yeah. There you go. Anyway, he had a section here about he lived a good chunk of time in Wisconsin, taught at the University of Wisconsin, and had a place there, which you can still go and see. So he had a reading that I'm going to read here from his section for April. It says, have you ever wondered why a thick crust of corky bark covers the whole tree, even to the smallest twig? This cork is armor. Burr Oaks were the shock troops sent by the invading forest to storm the prairie. Fire is what they had to fight. Each April, before the new grasses had covered the prairie with unburnable greenery, fires ran at will over the land, sparing only such old oaks as had grown bark too thick to scorch. Most of these groves of scattered veterans, known as oak openings, consist of Burr Oaks. Which I thought was just well written and interesting to note. Probably why they're found where they are in Iowa, being a prairie state as we are. So anyway, this was a little fun fact that I came across. I like his writing style, and it's a really fun book to read. You want a glue that you can trust, and fortunately, Titebond has the glue you need to get the job done with confidence. From interior glues with strong initial tack and short clamp time, to exterior glues with exceptional strength and water resistance, look to Titebond, the right glue for your next project. For more information, visit Titebond.com.
I got a really nice Burr Oak log that got dropped off last week. That's I haven't measured it. It'll fit on the sawmill for sure, but it's a big one. She's a hefty girl. I want to say it's probably 30 inches. So I'm gonna try to do true quarter sawing on that one. See, I'm gonna have to split it with the chainsaw first before I quarter it. So
okay,
yeah.
Like, what do you mean split it with the chainsaw? Just right down
lengthwise.
Take like 45 minutes and.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. We're gonna see.
Alaskan sawmill.
It might be. Yeah. I have one. I could do that. It just takes a lot of gas to do that.
Yeah.
But it's like I'm wondering if I like sort of kerf on both ends, kind of pre-score it, and then just start driving wedges. Maybe get the forks of the skid loader in there and start picking it up and bouncing it around. See if I can shake it bad boy apart.
Yeah. How does Burr Oak split? Like, could you just split it?
I think I probably could. I don't know. I mean, I'm guessing at the center of the tree, it's probably pretty knotty. Like, there's probably a lot of pin knots and stuff. So, like, you'll probably get into some squirrely grain. Outside's clean and clear. Like, this is...
Yeah.
If it wasn't Burr Oak, it would be a veneer log. But nobody is veneering Burr Oak for a reason.
Not yet.
No. But it's a pretty good one. I'll have to run out and measure it when we're done podcasting.
Yeah, send a photo too, and I'll put that on there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'd be cool to see if you could do it all Peter Folensby style, just wedge it apart.
Yeah. Let's throw it with my chainsaw.
All right. That counts.
Yep.
That's how the Pilgrims did it.
I think so.
Have you done much sawing recently?
I have done zero sawing this year, which is really driving me nuts. I was planning on doing it the other weekend, but my neighbor, their daughter was graduating, so they had a graduation party, so they had a bunch of people parked over here, and I'm not going to be out sawmilling while they're having a graduation party. And then, yeah, this weekend is actually looking pretty good. These church doors are getting close where I might be waiting on some stain, so it may be it may be time to break out the mill because I got a lot of logs to get through.
Okay.
The other issue is that stacking my lumber outside, you get that really gray weather checked look. It comes off, right? Like you run it through the planer, run it through over the joiner, comes off. But a lot of people don't understand that. So they want they understand rough sawn, but they don't understand just take it through the planer, it'll look fine. So they want it to look nice. So what I did last year, and this was kind of a experiment, and I'm going to call it a success, is I milled a bunch of lumber in October, a bunch of walnut and some cherry. Some of those were from the Woodworking in America last year. Okay. Some of them were not. But then I stacked them in the storage side of my shop, right alongside the sawmill. Stacked them, stickered them. Not a whole lot of airflow because it's in the building.
Right.
Now, the building's pretty vented. Not a lot of airflow, though. This last weekend, I stuck a moisture meter on them, and they were at 12%. I'm like,
wow. Okay.
That's good enough for me. So I threw them in the lumber rack, and they're perfectly clean. I mean, not weather checked. Obviously, they haven't been sent outside. They're not grayed. Look like the day I saw them. So I think what I'm going to do is, if I can, try to mill all my cherry at once, mill all my walnut at once, mill all my ash at once, and get them all into their own individual stacks.
Sure.
Either inside or outside under a cover. I've covered stuff in the past, but it's always kind of half-assed. I have a bunch of steel left over from when they built the shop, so I'm going to actually make some roofs for them to strap over top.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's there's been a lot of other things that have taken priority to milling. So, unfortunately, this damn day job just gets in the way.
Yep.
Really annoying. But
if you're looking to sponsor Logan Whitmer and release him from his corporate servitude.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. And then you know what? Then Jim wouldn't have to listen to me on the podcast anymore.
Nope.
Right.
Was it Jim? I don't remember if his name
was
Jim.
Jim.
Yep. Yeah. Screw
or you'd
Jim.
be able to
He's not
able to talk
anymore.
What if he came back? He's like, maybe I should go back and check that podcast out, give it a second chance.
Yeah.
And boom.
Nope. Shots
Logan
fired.
Drops it on him. We just got him back, and then shoot. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh well.
No, honestly though, I've had the itch pretty bad to get out and mill. But there was a lot of... I have this 10-year plan for my property, right? I'm on year 8 right now, so we're getting close. But a lot of what I've been working on early this year was dirt work, brush mowing, moving stuff, and doing a lot of grading work around the place. And a lot of the grading work is on the east side of the shop building. So I have this big flat gravel pad right now that's perfect for stacking lumber. So they're this whole thing has been around, everything I've been doing has been prepping to get through I probably have 100 logs laying here.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. It's been prepping to get through all of these logs that I have. So it's all been sawmilling adjacent, just not,
Well, I mean, that works too, because you got to have a place to put it without it just turning into
what it was.
An auto boneyard of just stacked up logs.
Yep. Yeah. And let's be fair. The gnats this year have been insane, and they bite. Oh. They're not like fruit fly gnats. They're
They're
angry,
mean.
vampiric. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm hoping maybe a little bit warmer weather knocks them out. So, although I do have a 22,000 CFM fan I can stick next to me as I'm milling. Fly through this.
There you go. Yeah. John, I saw you working on a clamp cart design earlier this week. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I'm working on, it's an unholy offspring of the shop organizer that I did for, that was a Woodsmith project, right?
Yes.
And then we did it on the TV show, and it hangs in the video studio now. And then we have a clamp cart in there too. So trying to come up with, it's like a combination, one side like workstation, small clamp holder, and then a spot for your nailers and drills and glue and odds and ends stuff. And then on the back side, room for longer clamps, and then throw it on some casters and wheel it around. So getting weird. See what we can come up with, you know?
Yeah.
But that's a ShopNotes project, and that's kind of our sandbox that we get to play in. So why not come up with some fun shop projects?
Yeah. The clamp cart that we have, we actually did on the TV show years and years ago. Mm-hmm. So it's been around the block quite a few times. And it's great for holding clamps, but not much else. Mm-hmm. And we've kind of like piggybacked a bunch of glue bottles and brushes and, you know, even small bottles of CA glue and stuff like that. And it just ends up looking a little cluttered. And I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of become a rat's nest of clamps and just a dumping ground. So it's a good time to kind of reevaluate and redo it. So get organized.
Right. And I was looking at it as, you know, how single purpose do you want a shop project like that to be? Because I think it's, you know, depending on your shop size or setup or what you're doing, having a cart that just holds clamps can be effective. But a lot of times it's also handy to have a place for like your glue bottle, like you said, your nailers to live, because you're going to use that during assembly anyway. So then that stuff doesn't have to be on your bench or sitting on the floor while you're trying to assemble a project.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of nice to have dedicated kind of like little staging areas for the different processes that you do in the shop. Maybe like the clamp assembly type, like staging. This would be like a kind of a staging cart, you know, like maybe something for like finishing that you could roll in and out depending on what your workshop, you know, setup is. But so just find it helpful.
Yeah.
I've always thought it would be good, and maybe this is part of what I put in my outfeed table when I start working on that. But like, I always thought it'd be good to have like horizontal clamp storage, like that slides under an assembly table.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So like thinking of like Dylan's giant 1-man assembly table thing.
Oh yeah.
Like if that had legs and you had storage underneath for like pipe clamps and F-style clamps and stuff, and then you could slide in and out, because it's like right there's where you use them.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
right.
Let's call a cart what it is. It's a horizontal surface that you're going to stack crap on anyways. At least this one has a purpose, right?
Yeah.
So
I think the trick on that is how, you know, what are you putting the clamps in to hold them horizontally? You know, like, PVC, are you creating PP? Yeah, right. Like,
yeah,
you could do it as PVC pipe and then just have these sleeves that you just inserting the clamps into. So
yeah, I will say, like, I've been super happy with, in my shop I just have them mounted on the wall on clamp racks, kind of like we have in the big shop,
right?
And to me that's so convenient. Like I built did we do that cart that's on the set? Is that the same one that I built and painted blue a couple years ago?
Yes.
So I built that in the with the intent that I was going to put my clamps on that and stuff. I'm like, I don't know. It just was, as you said, it ends up being a rat's nest. You kind of roll it around the shop. Like, it's great in theory, but then, like, where does it live in the shop? Like, where do you push it out of the way to? And, you know, knowing full well that I have filled up a 1,600 square foot shop, like, where do you push that? Where do you push it to?
Right. Well, even John and I were debating that when he had asked me about the size of casters to put on the cart, because our clamp cart now has, I don't know, what are they, like 3 inches or something like that?
I'd say maybe even 2 inch. They're pretty little.
They're pretty
little
small
guys.
Yeah. And then a couple of our other carts have probably our standard 4-inch casters on. And it's like, do you have a clamp cart? Because the presentation story of it in a magazine is really cool, because we'll say, hey, your clamp cart can just live in the corner or whatever, and then you just wheel it over whenever you need to assemble something. Mm-hmm. And the truth of the matter is that thing just kind of gets parked.
It never moves.
It's about as mobile as a mobile home.
Yep.
And the only reason that you have wheels on it is to pull it out so you can sweep behind it and then push it back in.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing too, like, it gets way heavier than you think it would. And it's not like you're off-roading with this cart, but it just, maybe some larger casters would help make it easier to wheel around, and then you would pull it to different areas of the shop. I don't know.
Yeah. So, like, there has to be some type of formula, right, on the relationship between caster size and load and how easy it is to move. Because you put 200 pounds on a cart with 2-inch casters versus 8-inch casters, way easier to move the 8-inch casters around. So, like, I'm thinking of, like, those giant casters we put on that garage cart we just built on the TV show. Like, those things are super nice. Like, they're kind of impractical for a lot of stuff because they're so big. But, man, you could put 2,000 pounds on those and roll them around the shop.
Right.
Whereas how many times have you had, like, even the little steel casters where you're rolling them and all of a sudden you hit a screw that's laying on the floor and it just skids to a halt, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, here it's the little drops of glue that dry to the floor and trip you up.
Yeah. That would be my question for listeners and viewers is, what's your preferred clamp storage method in your shop? Do you have wall racks, or are you putting the clamps on racks but just on other fixtures, you know, like the back of your workbench or connected to your table saw, or do you have it as a cart? And what kind of cart do you have? Because I know there's, you know, one popular traditional style is like a big A-frame clamp cart. Perfect if you have a lot of long bar clamp kind of things. And related to that, I think a lot of our clamp cart designs, we've tried to be pretty universal in that when we show it in photos, we're showing it with bar clamps and pipe clamps and hand screws and spring clamps and C clamps and all that kind of stuff. And I think folk mostly have a lot of one type or the other. And to try and show or design a clamp cart that has specific sections for specific types of clamps is not necessarily practical, in spite of how visually appealing it can be.
Mm-hmm. If you guys were to pick one style of clamp, what are you picking?
I kind of like the aluminum, what are they called? Bar style?
The bar clamps, yeah.
Are those the ones from Dubuque?
Yeah,
yes.
The Dubuque ones, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of the ones I prefer or grab over some of the other clamps that we have around. But
yeah,
I use the F style, the shorter F style clamps a lot. The foot to 6-inch style. So
yeah, I in my shop I have several 3-foot and 4-foot of the aluminum bar clamps, and I kind of wish I had some 2-footers, like a set of probably 4 of the 2-footers. I ended up getting the 3-footers because it's like, if I need them for shorter, then these will work. But there's been a lot of times where you're gluing up something smallish where the 2-footers would be more practical. But then, yeah, like John said, I have some F-style ones in the shorter lengths.
I don't actually have any of those bar clamps. Like, I guess I have 4 of the nice big Bessie ones, like they're I-beam style. But like, those are just, they weigh like 90 pounds a piece. Like, you only get those out when like your mallet's not working. That's when you get those big clamps out.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But I'm a huge fan of the F clamps, and I actually really like parallel clamps too. But they have to be the woodpeckers ones. Bessies are fine. Like I like the Bessies. But the woodpeckers ones, the handles turn at 90 degrees. You pull the handle, it turns 90 degrees so you can crank the crap out of something. I love that.
So it turns almost like into a Tommy bar kind of thing then.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and we've had those reader tips all the time where it's like, oh, it's drill hold the handle, stick a screwdriver in it. That's what you're doing, but with the handle.
Yeah. Okay.
They do. I don't think you can get as much. Saying this, knowing full well that our line is you don't need that much pressure as you're clamping. Your joinery sucks if you need that much pressure. But I feel like they flex, the parallel jaw clamps I have flex a little bit more than my F-style clamps do. I have some really nice Bessies, and I have some of the woodpeckers F clamps as well. I do find that the more and more I have like tendonitis issues, the harder the F clamps are for me to tighten down.
Okay.
I was thinking about this the other day. If someone were just starting out in woodworking, and I know clamps can get really expensive when you're getting all different varieties, would you suggest they start with pipe clamps just because you can kind of get the little pipe clamp kit and put them on any size or couple pipes together? No? See, I don't like them either, and they're big and heavy and leave black marks, but it's like it'd be a lower entry point, I guess.
Go to Harbor Freight. The Harbor Freight clamps they're great. Like, they're good clamps for the price.
Okay.
Like, and you don't really ever need clamps that long. Like, we have a couple set of 8-footers, and it's, I mean, when you need them, you need them. But you only need 2. You don't need more than 2. So, ratchet straps work great as clamps, too. I just did that with these doors. So, yeah.
All right, that's a follow-up question. What's a clamp starter kit? Based on what you know now, listeners, what would you have as your clamp starter kit for somebody starting out with woodworking? I think there's probably 6 or 8 different paths for sure that you could take on that. And it's entirely subjective, so everybody's wrong and right at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, now that I think about that, I do have a bunch of the Pittsburgh aluminum bar clamps. I don't use them ever. They're probably down in the basement shop still, but I never use them. But I do have those. All right.
Back in the Disney vault.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, let's wrap up this episode with an update on your church doors, Logan.
God, I'm hoping by the time that this podcast airs, these SOBs are installed. I'm working on the trim right now. The trim is going a lot slower than I thought. I mean, if you think about it, you're like, oh, I'm just mitering trim pieces, gluing and nailing them on. Well, yeah, but when you're trying to make your miters match up to parts that might be a degree off, like they're not perfectly sitting, the rails and styles aren't sitting at perfectly 90 degrees. They're maybe like 89 or, 89.5, and then stuff starts getting off. And like, I have like 8 hours in this trim already. But I did remember my buddy had, so I was I was cutting them all with my miter. I was cutting all the trim with my miter gauge, which is really obnoxious because you got to flip it back and forth from left to right. And I have the nice saw stop Revolution where you can get it down to like 1/10 of a degree.
Sure.
So it's super easy to get it set to where you want. So that's not the issue. It's just the obnoxious part of flipping it back and forth to cut left and right hand 45s. I was like, you know what? I have a buddy that went down this rabbit hole of doing segmented turning work. I think he has a set of Woodpecker sold a set, or they still do sell a what's called their it's like their Accu angle miter sled something or other. Accu set miter sled. I'll find it. Anyways, it's basically 2 table saw sleds. You could buy the left or the right, or you could buy both. My buddy had both of them, the left and the right. They have fences. So basically it is a cross-cut sled, but each one has a miter gauge on it, which works out fantastic. So I went and grabbed that last night from him, set it up on my saw. I had to adjust his miter bars for my saw, which, whatever, it's fine. But it made cutting these angles so much faster. I did more trim work this morning before lunch than I did all day yesterday. So I'm hoping by tomorrow afternoon I am staining them, and then I'd like to get them installed before the Grizzly tent sale. It may be after the Grizzly tent sale just because one of the guys wants to help. So we might have to wait until he's back in town. So long story short, I'm not going into business making church doors.
It's a one-off.
Yep.
Now, remind me, are you doing casing? Is there a jam already that you're fitting these to, or are you making a jam?
I'm making a jam.
Okay.
It's already done. All it is, it's a 4-sided jam, header, 2 sides, and a threshold. It's done. It's rabbited. It gets screwed together. I'm leaving it unassembled until I get there, and then I'll assemble it. Yeah. One of the big things, I'm waiting on the handle still. So it's like I don't want to install the doors till I have the handle. The hinges showed up the other day. The deadbolt showed up. The stays showed up. Yeah. It's just kind of got to wait for that handle to show up.
Yep. All right. Closing in on the end.
Getting there.
Speaking of closing in, that wraps up another episode of the ShopNotes Podcast. Thanks for listening, everybody. If you have any questions, comments, or smart remarks, you can put those in the comment section. Remember that the podcast on YouTube is moving to its own channel. At ShopNotes Podcast is where you'll find it on the YouTubes, and you could put your comments there. Send them to us in an email, woodsmith@woodsmith.com. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Titebond. You want a glue that you can trust, and fortunately, Titebond has the glue you need to get the job done with confidence. From interior glues with strong initial tack and short clamp time to exterior glues with exceptional strength and water resistance, look to Titebond, the right glue for your next project. For more information, visit Titebond.com. That's it. Bye, everybody.